Sustainability Record Card. This is Eric Mucklow from headquarters. This is not the same training that was held back in December and earlier that was an overview of the record card. This version, we are going to recap that training briefly for a few slides, and then Jeanette Feast is online with us from Northwestern Division. She's going to give us a division perspective on how to implement the record card in the field and how to answer and get the specific information into specific cells that a lot of people have been asking about. Before we talked about overall areas of information, but she's taking it down deeper than we went before into more practical terms. So I will switch over to the my presentation slide here to a different deck, and then we'll get started with that. Okay, here it is. The new slide should be on the screen now. First, recapping what the Energy and Sustainability Record Card is. It's not to be confused with the Scorecard, which is a OMB document, which is the red dot, green dot kind of compliance with a number of mandates that each agency fills out in the federal government every year. This is unique to USACE, although we will be looking at it from a tri-service perspective. So specifically, the Energy and Sustainability Record Card is an Excel spreadsheet. We'd like to get it online in the future, but currently it is in the form of an Excel spreadsheet that will publish our facility performance. It'll document our project compliance with the overall most significant mandates. There are a lot more than out there that are also on the radar, but these are the big ticket items. And it'll structure a lot of our random data calls for compliance issues and things. We will be able to have consolidated data on hand and consistent across the field for reporting on congressional inquiries and things like that. So that's the intent, is to start reporting on our compliance, because we do get a lot of questions about these things. And if we want Congress to keep giving us money, we need to show them that we're doing what they have told us to do. So September 6th, we issued ECB 2013-25, implementation of the Energy and Sustainability Record Card, and the new DD 1354 sustainability codes, which was added in there when the DD 1354 form for turnover of facilities was revised to add a column for sustainability codes, being 1, 2, 3, or 4, based on whether or not the building is compliant, non-compliant, or not applicable for the guiding principles, and we'll cover that a little bit more in a second. So the ECB forms basically the instructions for how to start, when what the scope of the facilities that the record card should be turned in for, the roles and responsibility versus E&C and the field and PID for the submission process, the major milestones depending on the type of contract, as well as the references for training, specifically the Mercy website most of you have probably already been to for sustainability energy. So let's take a look at what is in the Excel workbook. First, we have the front page, the Energy and Sustainability Record Card itself. And then behind that, we have the Building Data Entry tab. This is a long sheet that basically has blanks to fill in various forms of fuel or energy that the building will consume, as well as water, and also a block for waste handling. And it may look intimidating at first with a lot of different blanks on there, but most of them will be blank. You don't often have a facility that uses more than 1 or 2 fuel types. So there will be a lot of things on there that won't apply to every project. Now behind that, we have different checklist tabs. We have one for mandates, being EPAC 2005 and ESA 2007. Some of the more specific clauses are referenced there to basically verify compliance. Those are typically in form of a 0% meaning no, 100% meaning yes, and being a percentage if there's a well mostly clause, then that allows people to enter that value as something in between. Now, links from the High Performance Sustainability and Mandates tab will go to a contextual help tab that gives you background on the topic of discussion for the questions, and as well as references and links to more information. So if there's a question that doesn't make much sense or anything, you can go to that tab, or it'll take you there automatically if you click on certain links, and then you can find out what it's talking about. So the overall record card is to give us performance at a glance. The top section is basically its facility and project location. On this sheet, on the record card itself, there's only this one green block that says brief building description. That's the only one that is filled out manually. All the other data is just pulled in from the other tabs. And basically, if you're not familiar with the record card yet, the light blue are things that are pulled in or calculated, and the light green cells are the only cells that you enter data. The middle section, we have the graphs and the dots indicating compliance with various mandates, as well as graphs indicating how much energy was reduced through efficiency, being the clear pie shape, and as well as energy produced and consumed, represented by green, and then net utilities from the grid or supplier, electricity, gas, and all that shown in red. Similarly, water, we have the empty top part of the glass is how much we reduced consumption. The light-colored water top layer is any harvested, processed water reuse, gray water reuse, and then of course the blue being the utility-provided water. The waste graph similarly has the empty cell for avoided waste. That is waste basically where if you have a strategy or policy that allows you to avoid the creation of waste in the first place, such as working with the manufacturer to reduce the packaging that something comes in delivered to the site. That would apply there. And diverted is anything that's diverted from a landfill that doesn't go to a landfill. If it goes to a waste energy plant, if it goes to a recycling center, if it's reused, then that would be diverted from the landfill. And then the brown block at the end is just disposed of. That's what goes in the landfill at the end of the day. And then of course across the bottom we have some overall summary figures for the people that want to know the numbers behind the graphs, that talk about what the baseline is, how many kilobtu's and gallons were saved, and it has a column for actuals that'll be something that the DPWs and others agencies can use after we turn over the building. We'll give them this file and they can continue with it if they so choose. So at this point, our motto is Essayons, which means let us try. So I will turn this over.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So thanks, folks, for joining us today to hear a little bit about the sustainability energy. I'm sorry, say that again, Eric? Okay, great, thank you. So like Eric talked about, he gave us an overview, reminder of what the record card is, why we have it, what we're using it for. And one of those bullets that he highlighted on the early slides is that the purpose of the record card is to provide some consistency in reporting so that as we are sending this information forward to headquarters, we're doing it consistently. And so as we were starting to implement this within NWD, we quickly realized that there are a lot of different cells in this record card for folks who have dug into it and started working with it on your projects. And we felt like in order to continue to improve the consistency, that it would be appropriate for us to have some instructions and guidance for how we are implementing the record card within NWD. So what we've done, I worked with a group of folks within NWD and then outside with the other MSCs and with headquarters with Eric and others to put together instructions how to fill these out cell by cell, because there are some of these cells where people may have questions about how do we come up with that information, where does that come from, what interpretation are we using for it. And so the intent of the guidance that we've put together is to walk through piece by piece and cell by cell how we are filling these things out. And I'm not going to go through every cell right now. I don't think that that's something that we need to do, but I do want to highlight some of the specific areas where we've been getting a lot of questions and where there's differences that are coming up. So like Eric mentioned here on the record card on the front page, a lot of this is all brought forward from the other worksheets. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that worksheet, or really any time at all. I wanted to jump over to the building data worksheet. And so as Eric mentioned, it does look big and long, but when you start to get into it and step through the different cells, it is actually pretty accessible and not as overwhelming as maybe it looks like from the outset. The one piece that I want to highlight here at the top of this is the certification over on cell F2. So for certification, we're encouraging folks to track if you're using a different type of lead rating tool, possibly. So if you're doing a hospital commercial interior project or a neighborhood development project or some other type of non-new construction, typically all of our projects use LEED for new construction, but we do have those one-off projects here and there that use other rating tools. And so for the certification block, our instructions are encouraging folks to put in there what lead rating tool you've used. So if it's LEED NC for a new construction or whatever the different rating tool is, just so that we have some clarity and consistency on knowing which rating tool was used. Another area where we are talking with folks and getting different questions, you'll see as I scroll down here, and if you're aware or been working in the record card, we have a baseline column, a model column, and an actual column. And so at this point, the baseline and model column is all that's going to be filled out. And sometimes it may just be a baseline column that is filled out if it's early in a project and we don't have a detailed energy model completed yet. It may be that we've got baseline information for the project, but nothing other than that. And so in the early phases, there's different stages of when this is submitted throughout a project. And so early on, not all of this is going to be filled out. And when we turn a final record card in for a project, we won't even have the metered or actual data in column E. So that's one that will remain blank through the life of the project right now, because at this point, we are not going back and looking at actual results. And so that's something that we're talking about doing and talking about providing that service, but today it's not something that we're doing. If you happen to do it on a project, you're welcome to fill that in, but that is not something that I'm expecting within NWD for folks to have filled out. So as we step into, you'll see here on this record card, what I have done is I've taken the baseline record card that Eric has included in the ECB, and I have gone in and made some edits to it where there are where I feel like there are assumptions that everyone's going to be on the same page as a starting point, and then there may be some corrections that need to be made. For instance, up here on cell C14, the assumption is that we are targeting a 12% energy savings over Ashtray 90.1 2010. That's based on the requirement of the new UFC that came out last spring, that highlights that the 30% savings is approximately 12% in 90.1-2010. So my assumption is that's what we're going to be targeting on our projects. If teams are going further above and beyond that in a life cycle cost-effective manner, then they can make changes to that. But I have gone in and provided some information on some of these cells where there's already expectation of where we would be at. Another area where we're getting some questions is here in the fossil fuel energy use and the non-fossil fuel, non-renewable energy use. And at this point, our guidance for teams is to simply put everything under fossil fuel derived electric grid. We know that across the country, there are different regions of the country that use more renewable or even non-renewable, non-fossil as their electric grid derivation. So it is, that opportunity is out there in different regions of the country without providing specific instructions on how to calculate that and how to determine that. Our recommendation right now is simply to put everything up in the fossil fuel derived electric grid. If you've walked through the calculations and can show where you got your data from and why you're breaking it out across the different cells here, I have no problem supporting that. But to get people started and move people forward, our recommendation was simply to put it all up in the top at C19 there. So continuing on down, the on-site harvest is pretty straightforward. If you're producing any renewable on-site, no discrepancies or differences there. The water savings is pretty straightforward as well for people who have been working on lead calculations. That information goes there in the water area. And then an area where we've seen some questions and been working with teams is here in the recycled materials and waste diversion area. So a lot of teams are wondering, how do we develop a target? How do we come up with our recycled and landfill target? And so what I have done is, in coordination with the folks at ERDIC, who are some of our waste experts, we have found some EPA reports that indicate an EPA study from 2009 that indicates an average, industry average, of 4.34 pounds per square foot of construction. That's how much waste is created in a project. So if we assume 1,000 square feet project, I mean, we're building bigger than that, of course, but if we look at that size of a project, 4.34 pounds per square foot, and then what you can do is take, if you assume that you are diverting, say, 65% of your material to having it recycled or diverted. So you do 65% times that 4.34 pounds per square foot times your 1,000 square feet of your building, and you'd enter that number there for your target, and then the remainder, the other 35%, would be disposed to the landfill. So that would be one way to develop your target. And I provided that so that, again, we have some consistency so that everyone's on the same page in how we're going about developing that target, the current and actual. This is one area where we will have actual information at the end of a project. We do know how much waste was created and where it went at the end of a project. So we will fill those in. And then current, we would just submit when we are at submitting different phases, if there is any waste being created at that point. So that is one area where we did provide some additional information for teams so that they would have some knowledge of how to come up with that target information.
A couple have come in already, Jeanette.
So moving over next to the mandates sheet, and I would encourage you, I am sharing my screen, so I can't see if anyone's
let's wait till the end,
questions.
and also if you haven't already, if you can mute your speaker.
DCO, page right now. So if you have questions, go ahead and
a couple times the mic
type
is
them
cutting
into
in
the
and out,
chat.
and I don't know if
Eric and I
that's a
will go
feedback
through them
feature or
as
not.
we are wrapping up at the end. So feel free, as we're going through here, think about it and put in any questions that you might have. So here on the mandate. Okay, if you want to read them to me, you can do them now, or we can wait till the end. Okay. Okay, good reminder. Okay, so continuing on the mandates worksheet, what I've done through here, you'll see some areas where there are numbers already entered, and those are areas where I've entered a default. And so working with folks and thinking about what the default is going to be, we've entered those numbers. And so what I want to highlight here on this screen, this worksheet, rather than stepping through all of the different ones where we've entered a default, I want to highlight the ones where there are specific areas where you're going to be responsible for entering your answer. So there on cell B13, the Ashtray Compliance, going to be required, of course, to enter that. As we saw on the previous slide, the UFC indicates that if we follow 90.1 2010, we would be hitting about 12% energy savings. So And on these, what we're entering for compliance is a number between 0 and 100. If you comply, you enter 100. If you don't comply, you enter 0. So over on column D13, cell D13, if we are fully compliant, it's a FY15 building, and we are fully compliant with the fossil fuel reduction requirement of 65%, we would enter 100 in that cell. If we've done a life cycle cost analysis and we've determined that we can't make that for some reason, or there are other project restrictions that are not allowing us to meet that 65% fossil fuel reduction requirement, you would prorate what you've achieved. So if you have achieved half of the 65% requirement, you would enter 50% there. And that's the instructions and guidance that we've given within NWD for how to fill out that cell in particular. Continuing on down, some of these different requirements are more Army-wide or federal higher level requirements, and so the defaults we've entered in there as 100% because our projects have minimal impact to the total overall Army metric. The D21, 30% hot water demand, we do have that one where there is a requirement to run the life cycle cost analysis, and if you've done that, then you would enter 100%. If you are installing it, if your LCCA told you it's not cost effective, you'd still enter 100% because you've done the LCCA and you've determined it's not the right thing to do for the project. So that's one where teams are going to need to enter their data on that as well. So continuing down, most of the rest of these on this sheet we determined are going to have the default of 100%. So these are those higher level, lot of default numbers. Of course, if you have a project where, such as here on D23, install one fuel pump for each fueling center. So the default is 100% because rarely do we design fuel centers. If your project happens to be a fuel center, then you would need to obviously correct that if you have not installed a renewable fuel pump. So because the majority of our projects aren't those, we decided that the default would simply be 100% there. And you'll see that continuing on as you see some of these other defaults that we've entered. So then the other worksheet that we have here is the HPSB worksheet, and rather than going through each of the different specific cells, I have put in some defaults here on this one as well. The one that I do want to highlight here is one specific area where the default I have entered or that we have entered is no, and that is down here for water efficient products for irrigation contractors in particular. So there's a requirement for HPSB that we use WaterSense certified contractors. And if our specs haven't been updated to include that requirement, then that's not something we're going to have on our projects. And so I've entered the default for that one as no. And if your project has made the updates and corrections to it to include WaterSense qualified contractors, then you can change that to a yes. But that is one area where the default seems to be more appropriately no rather than yes for compliance. So that's just a quick overview of what we've done. We have our implementation instructions is about 8 pages long. In addition to stepping through cell by cell and providing instructions on how to fill these out, we've also provided some instructions on how we're going about within NWD, what kind of QA and QC we're doing on these record cards before they get sent forward. We've also developed a naming convention because each of these record cards is required for each building on a project. So you may have a project with 5 buildings and it's required to be submitted multiple times over the life of the project. So we knew that we needed to keep track of which building we are reporting on and what phase of the project. And so we've put some of that together, have a naming convention. We've also developed some initial contract language. When you read the ECB, you see that it has a requirement to be implemented on all projects that have not achieved BOD as of the 6th of September of 2013. So it does have quite a reach within NWD. That's not an insignificant number of projects. We have many projects that are in construction. And again, this applies to every building, not just every project. So it does have an impact that we're going to have to be tracking and keeping up with to make sure that we are submitting everything that we need to. So in order to pull that information together and get it from each of the different contracts, we've got some draft contract language available in our instructions as well for teams to be able to use, so that we're not having to have everyone reinvent the wheel and develop that on their own. So that.
Okay, I will bring up the presentation again and pick up where we left off.
That was impressive, you gotta admit. I don't even know how I did that.
Okay, so we're kicking off the FAQ portion. Before I start getting into the FAQs that we have in the document right now, which will be available on the Mercy site when we figure out how to put it there. I wanted to talk about something that's come up a lot recently, and that Jeanette alluded to when she mentioned putting all of the electricity into the fossil fuel block. ESA 2007 was written by people that really wanted to get a handle on precisely how much carbon emissions we had and all that from the fossil fuels, and they mandated this whole these reductions in terms of fossil fuel generated electricity, but not only at the building, but at the source. So there's two factors that need to be considered to go by the book. One would be the ratio of the electrical grid wherever you are that is provided by coal burning or natural gas or what have you, versus the amount of electricity provided by nuclear or hydro, whatever. Where Jeanette is up there in the upper northwest, there's a lot of hydro. The DOE, they do publish factors, conversion factors for different regions. They will tell you what you need to multiply your electricity by from the grid to figure out what proportion of it is fossil and the remainder then is non-fossil. That can be done, and so if you don't meet the energy target with just putting everything in fossil, which is the worst case scenario, you can multiply by that factor and put the non-fossil fuel down on the non-fossil blank, and that might help you out. But that does not reconcile the issue of the source in this energy for fossil fuels. Basically, up to 2/3 of the energy generated at a power plant can be lost just in the lines getting to the facility, depending on distance. So that ratio can be dramatically swung one way or the other based on the proximity of the power plants to the site. So that really complicates things to a point that DOE is looking into trying to figure out a way to solve that, and they're looking at some kind of formula with regional climate zone-based coefficients to use, and some of the things that they haven't come out with yet. Those are going to come out as a rulemaking. My colleague Dan Carpio is involved with that, as well as David Chapman. He's online, I believe. We're all going to be looking at that process, and we will do an update to the record card when that time comes. Simultaneously, I'm also trying to work with Air Force to get us both using the same one. So there will be some changes. The record card, there will be subsequent issues, and we'll talk about how to get those and where those will come from in a minute. But I wanted to give that as the first question and answer of the FAQ before going forward. So getting back to the other ones, does a record card have to be done for non-Army buildings, such as projects built for the Air Force or reserves? Basically, yes, it does. That's something that has come up a lot. The Air Force does have their own checklist that they require. In fact, their checklist, their prior version of their checklist is what formed two of the tabs on ours. We basically broke it out. But our record card is to track what the Corps of Engineers is doing as a service provider. So we need to track what we do on our record cards. Air Force needs to track their performance of the facilities that they are using us to build, so they have their own checklist that they need for their reporting. So it is a bit frustrating, but yes, both need to be done. Now that said, the Air Force checklist is not as automated as ours is in terms of figuring out if you're compliant or not using the energy data input. Theirs just has blocks saying, are you compliant with EC 2007? Are you compliant with EPEC 05? So you can do our record card, and that'll give you all the answers to put into the Air Force one. So it's not the end of the world, and I think our record card can actually be helpful compared to what people have been doing in the past of math on a napkin to figure out those answers. Next one here is I'm required to submit a similar Air Force checklist for the Air Force project. Do I need to? Oh yes, I just answered that. So that I guess was a redundant one. Let's see, did I jump ahead of myself? Oh yeah, okay, same kind of question. All right, sorry about that. So does the record card apply only to buildings or the building and the entire site, including exterior lighting for firing ranges, athletic fields, parking, etc.? No, it should only be the building in question. Basically, the guiding metric that we're looking at ultimately is the energy intensity or energy use intensity, UI, which is the energy per square foot per year of the building, how much it uses. So if you include large areas of exterior lighting that don't have any square footage associated with it, then that's going to really throw off the energy intensity of the facility. So basically, the building, the energy use is the Milcon project of the building on the 1391 primary facility, or basically the facility that has the interior space and not site supporting elements. The record card must be filled out for each building listed on the DD 1391. When a project is complex with multiple buildings, is it only for each building that is more than 5,000 gross square feet or costs at least $2.5 million by itself, or all buildings in the project? Basically, only the buildings that are themselves at least 5,000 square feet. If you have a campus and you have 3 buildings that are each 5,000 square feet plus, and you have 2 buildings that are 1,000 square feet, you don't have to do record cards on the 2 buildings that are only 1,000 square feet. Basically, the record cards go by facility, whether or not the facility is constructed as one project or if it's one of many in a project. So let's see, when determining applicability on projects of 5,000 square feet of interior space or $2.5 million in cost, please clarify if the cost limit is intended to be only considered on the basis of building costs within 5 feet of the building or the project's entire PA. I've looked at that again. I think that in the context of the mandates, it's referring to the cost of the building. These mandates are usually written in the context of a simple building project without any complexities associated with it. The design is done and my project is in construction completion phase. Do I need to submit a record card even if it's after the fact? Yes, this is something that a lot of people have complained about. Basically, the ECB says that anything that has not yet reached beneficial occupancy when it was published, which was in September 2013, it's effective. So you should be doing record cards, even if your building is already in construction. A lot of time has passed and a lot of people haven't done theirs yet or haven't started theirs, and so they might feel a little bit behind. I don't know if any relief is going to be due to them. The information that's required to go on the record cards from the energy model and things that are already required in the contract documents, in our typical contract documents. So it's just a matter of plugging and chugging the information. But we do need the information. If there's a unique workload of somebody who has a lot of projects that came due in the last few months, we might be able to work with them, but otherwise it shouldn't be, now that BRCA's over, we shouldn't have that big of an impact. Is additional funding available to modify contracts to get the contractors to provide the data? No, as with most reporting things, we do not have separate funding to fill out the record cards. We tried deliberately to figure out ways to structure the record card so that the compliance can be figured out just by entering data that you should already have on hand in the project file as a part of the energy models and some other LEED certification requirements and things that would already be required by the contract to be provided. If you want the contractor himself, him or herself, to fill out the record card for you, they may or may not do that for a fee, but we don't have any extra funding to provide that. Why is this report called the Energy and Sustainability Record Card and not Scorecard? Well, specifically to avoid confusion with the OMB's Sustainability Energy Scorecard. We wanted ours to have a different term because we still have a lot of people calling it the scorecard. So just try to remember that this is a record card. We're going to try to keep using that term because otherwise, at least up here at headquarters, it gets very confusing because the OMB scorecard is a major effort with people we work with. So how is waste creation avoided calculated? This is a sticky one. As far as the graph that shows the columns on the record card go, it's simply looking at the ratios that the user inputs in terms of whether it's tons or cubic yards. Most contracts are either in terms of cubic yards or tons, but you might have a situation where your recycling is pulled off by one guy and he's going by cubic yards of a dumpster, and another guy might be going by tons for what he takes to the concrete recycling plant or something like that, or to landfill. Hopefully you won't be in a situation where the tons and cubic yards are mixed. If they are, then you're going to have to do the best you can to figure out how to convert that. Likewise, if you do the waste avoided, it's just going to be up to a qualitative estimate as far as how much waste you avoided. There's not really a better way to describe that. Again, I gave the example earlier about what waste avoided is. I do get asked that a lot. If you have been shopping on Amazon.com recently, they have instituted a thing where they have I forget what they call it, but basically they have slimmed down packaging. Instead of having these big plastic oversized blister packs that were designed to prevent shoplifting, they have, if you get a little SIM card or something, it's just in a little cardboard sleeve, which is recyclable on top of that. So that's basically what that is referring to. How will new versions of the Excel file be issued? Basically, for those of you who remember, the Engineering Construction Bulletin, ECB, is hosted on the Whole Building Design Guide. There is the link directly to it on the screen. The PDFs, Adobe Acrobat files, have an ability to have attachments to them, and the initial spreadsheet was an attachment within that PDF file. So likewise, when we issue updates to the spreadsheet, we will remove that one to keep it from contaminating us after the fact, and replace it with the current version. So whenever you go to the Whole Building Design Guide and pull up that ECB, the latest and greatest Excel spreadsheet should be on there as the attachment. And I do have some changes pending. I've come across a couple errors and a couple formatting things to change, in addition, of course, to the whole ESA issue. We use a different LEED checklist. Is that okay? Do we need to submit it? You don't need to submit it. There are blanks on the data tab as well as blank on the record card itself, in addition to that description block where you can enter in the third-party verification system you're using, whether or not it's LEED, if you're using Green Globes or Green Building Challenge or something like that, or Energy Star rather. You can put that information in there as to just what your level of compliance is. We don't need a copy of the checklist. The checklist is included as a convenience in the spreadsheet, but it does not feed automatically onto the report card itself, so it's basically optional. So it's based, I believe, on LEED 2009 right now. If when LEED version 4 starts being applicable to our projects, then of course that won't need to be worried about, although hopefully by then we'll have an update that will cover that too. Are the mandates and high performance sustainable buildings worksheet optional submittals, or are they required? Yes, the mandates tab and the high performance sustainability guiding principles tabs, they do feed directly into the compliance dashboard. So that checklist of the guiding principles and that mandates the 0%, 100%, those do need to be filled out, answered, or whatever you want to call it, so that the green and red dots or yellow dots turn their appropriate color on that compliance dashboard. Something to note, as far as the 0% or 100%, somebody asked a lot about the solar hot water requirements and other things, where if something's not life cycle cost effective, if something is not applicable, or like if you have a fuel depot, if you don't do there's a requirement in there that you have to have a sustainable fueling station if you have a fuel depot. Well, if you're not doing a fuel depot, then that requirement does not apply to you. So that means that you are in compliance with the law because it doesn't comply with you. So that would be 100% is what you'd fill in there, not 0. 0 would be if something does apply to you but you don't do it. That's the perspective to think about as to whether you're compliant or not. The issue is if you're not compliant, that's what they're looking for. If it doesn't apply to you, then you are compliant because you're not violating anything. Is there a possibility of transitioning this to an online website or database system? Yes, that's what we hope to do. We are looking into tri-service solutions such as like the builder system or other things that are being used for existing buildings. That is the goal, and that is another reason that something that came up recently is please don't make changes to the spreadsheet where you add or subtract cells or rows or move things, because if we do go live online with a database solution, we will probably want to do a data pull and pull the data out of these Excel spreadsheets, and if cell A32 is A42 on yours or something like that, that could screw up a lot of things for all of us. So we ask that you not customize the spreadsheet. If you need something changed or think something should be changed or done differently, I'm all ears. Send it to me, and I'll look at integrating it into the next version to be released, and we'll handle it from there. So at this time, we'll start looking at the questions from the field over here. Some I came in and I answered while Jeanette was talking, but we'll see what else is on here. Let's see. Actually, let me go over those. For the sake of the recording, I'll read out the ones that have been answered already. Don asked, how will the data be pulled together to make a sense out of it for reporting trends, etc.? Basically, right now I'll be doing that manually. I'll be summarizing the data into a report at the end of the day, just by adding up the numbers myself. Hopefully, I especially want this to get automated, but until that happens, it'll be me. Another person asked if you could send a copy of the slideshow presentation. If you look down on the lower left of your screen, there's a downloads pod, and the top file there is the PowerPoint presentation, as well as a copy of the FAQ as a Word document. So you can click on those individually and click the button that says Save to My Computer. DCO is crashing for some people. I apologize for that. It does seem like there's a lot of bandwidth traffic today, just judging by the lag time. Where do we get all the baseline info? Basically, your mechanical engineers should have that information determined when they start their project as to what the applicable baseline is. It depends on what fiscal year it is and whether it's an Army project or an Air Force project or whatever. Army uses 189.1. The Air Force and Navy are still using 90.1. And of course, the 189.1 refers back significantly to 90.1. But they should be familiar with those. Now, ESA 2007 refers to commercial buildings energy survey, CBEX. Basically, there was, when we created the record card, there was movement to allow using a model in lieu of the CBEX data, because a lot of buildings in their initial survey were not a one-to-one comparison to our military facilities. And I believe that's something that can be done, but we will be giving guidance on how more specifically to handle ESA. We're trying not to make it too complicated. So there'll be more news for that coming. See, how do we handle non-DoD customers? Again, the USACE record card is for us. So if we're doing the work, we need to do it. Even if the client has a different version for themselves. Generally the mandates that are applying to us also apply. The same mandates apply to other federal agencies. So unless you're doing something for state and local government or some other entity that's not federal, then the same mandates should apply. Len asked, is it anticipated the installation energy managers will be responsible for updating the actual energy consumption? Some have asked for that. That's why we put the actual lines in there. Whether or not they do, that's to be seen. They'll probably just end up at the discretion of the installation. But we have the blanks available to them. It would be nice to have, but we don't have a structured process to direct anybody yet. Basically, the energy managers work for the DPW/MCOM, so that's going to be something that they have to endorse. Is the scorecard filled out during the design phase? Yes, it is. Basically, we wanted the scorecard not just to be an after-the-fact reporting mechanism, but something that can give guidance during the design and draw attention to some of the requirements before the design is already done, and at the end of the game you realized, oh gee, we were supposed to do X. So it is supposed to be filled out in the milestones that are mentioned in the ECB. For design build projects, granted most of it will be blank, and we might back off of some of that, but right now addressing these things with the project team sooner rather than later is usually the most beneficial to everybody, to not have surprises after the fact. Who is responsible to make sure the card is filled out? Basically the PID, Anna Ortega, I believe she's was online. She is the point of contact for who to submit these things to through the PID. They are responsible for routing and turning it into us. The ECB, as the ECB indicates, basically there is a hammer behind and consequence behind not doing it. Specifically, they will not issue authority to award at some of these milestones if the record card is not turned in, and that's already come to surprise some people. So, because granted, if there's no consequences, that's the easiest thing to let slip through the cracks in this austere time. So basically, that's where the impetus to actually get it done is that your project will stop until you do it. It's going to be submitted basically along the same lines as the current working estimate spreadsheets and things that they do. Let's see. In the energy usage section, how are cogeneration fossil fuel plants input? I think that a cogeneration plant, you would track. There's blanks on there for steam, for BTUs of steam delivered. Now, if you're not clear on the question, if the cogeneration plant is the project, or if it's for a facility that's served by the cogeneration plant. So basically, if the cogeneration plant is the project, then you wouldn't count the energy that it's not using. That would be energy that goes to somebody else. We're looking at the energy used by the facility. If it's served by a cogeneration plant, then you would count the electricity being used, and you'd count the BTUs of the steam delivered as two separate line items. After the building is constructed, who maintains the record cards, the owner of the building or USACE? when the building is turned over, we will get our final copy, what we consider our final copy of the record card, and we will put it on the Mercy site in a library there. We will also turn over the Excel spreadsheet to the DPW, to MCOM. We do have some good contacts over there. Hopefully we'll be able to get some back. But right now we don't have a way to get any of that actual data, if they do fill it in, back to us. But E&C, through our Sustainability and Energy Mercy site, the link is under the web links pod on the left-hand side of your screen, Sustainability and Energy website. They'll be maintaining a library there. How long are we, after occupancy, are we expected to wait to recommend owners to start filling in the actual consumption? You know, the way this was figured is the record card is a living document. So as data comes in, as the design is fleshed out from design through construction into occupancy, basically just keep updating it. So I would not necessarily wait to put actual consumption data in. I would say as soon as you start getting it, start filling it in, knowing that of course you'll have, with anything, you'll have wide variances until things average out. I'm hoping that was what the intent of that question was. Was that supposed to say fill, not figure? I think I missed the context of that question. Let's see, once metering is in place, up and running with no hiccups, will building use data become an automatic feed into the record card? Once we get the record card to be an automated system, I think that's years out, but the meters will be fed into some kind of system through MCOM. That is the primary customer on that. But we would like to have basically something feeding into whatever system we end up with, so that we know how far off our models are from reality. Energy models are getting a bit of a misnomer as far as what their intent was and is. Basically, energy models are useful for selecting between two different types of systems or more. They don't really have the ability to accurately project what actual energy consumption will be. However, if once we get some data that we can start determining how off the energy models are, then some of the broad-brushed assumptions that are made might be able to be better refined. So we do think that we're helping advance the industry in the long term by getting better accuracy for that. Let's see, Russell. Ashtray and lead energy data include interior and exterior energy consumption. Why is the record card making comparisons of just energy consumption within the building footprint while recording compliance with lead and Ashtray? Basically, the Milcon project typically includes out to the 5-foot line. Exterior lighting and things like that that's on the building or in the immediate part of the building, that would be included. But what I was talking about earlier was if you had a firing range or significant exterior lighting or something that was for an exterior space outside the building, then that would be something that you would not include. And usually on the 1391, those are treated as separate line items. So if you have security lighting and things on the building, then yes, those would still count. But clarify that or not. Let's see. How is the data collection effort being synced with other energy/building management data collection systems? Right now, it's not. Again, that's what we hope to achieve in the future. But we will see. Right now, this is old school data collection. What is the key difference between the record card and the scorecard? Okay. The scorecard is something you go on the OMB website and you can pull them up for various agencies. They basically go through the guiding principles and they ask a lot of questions on how the agency is doing in terms of the agency's operations and how the agency is doing on the things that they do. Our design and construction process is a part of our operations. The record card basically, instead of looking at the agency performance, it's looking at the building performance. The building performance is a topic which will be addressed, that is addressed in the scorecard, but that's just one of the many items on the scorecard that it covers. How will version control integrity be maintained once the building is turning over a spreadsheet with the expectation of being updated? With limited funds, people, unless there was a mandate, maybe death of the record card. Hopefully we won't have a whole lot of different versions that get passed around or get out there until we get the system automated. The solution to what you just suggested there about the different versions and being updated with limited resources, an automated online system where you log in to a central location would solve the version issue. But yeah, I think we probably will have some cases where we have older versions of things coming back up when long after newer versions have been issued. The BTUs and the data will pretty much be the same. The record card is just a reporting mechanism. So even if the format changes, the data should be consistent. Okay, that's the last of the questions that I see on the board here. And we're right at 4 o'clock. Okay, so hopefully that was the last question. So again, thank you all for your time. I think it went pretty well, despite the limited bandwidth we had today. Again, this meeting is being recorded, and we will host it on the Mercy site, as well as following up with any other questions and things via email. If you on the left-hand side of the screen, there's Lindsay's address and Kelly's address, who manage the Mercy site, and you can feed them any questions you might have, or if you want to get your CEUs or LUs. And also, both Jeanette and